This is In the Loop. I'm Bianca Ficini in for Christian Bryant. Here's what we have for you in this episode. Open warfare continues to intensify in Ukraine. Russia is ramping up assault on civilian areas and making strategic advances on major cities. On Thursday, Kherson, a city in southern Ukraine, fell to Russian forces. Meanwhile, attacks continue in the capital Kyiv, northeastern Kharkiv, and Mariupol in the southeast part of the country. Several Russian warships were also spotted near the southern port city of Odessa. Despite all the aid and supplies and weapons, no other nations have sent troops on the ground to assist Ukraine. The country is not a member of NATO or the EU, but there has been a creation of a foreign legion, which has attracted troops voluntarily from around the world. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky put out the ask days ago, saying, "Anyone who wants to join the defense of Ukraine, Europe, and the world can come and fight side by side with the Ukrainians against the Russian war criminals." In an emotional update to Telegram on Thursday, Zelensky said 16,000 foreigners had volunteered. It wasn't immediately clear where they were coming from. For the record, experts warn traveling to Ukraine with no military experience is extremely dangerous. As tensions continue to escalate on the ground, there's another conflict playing out online. Many prominent hackers have taken a firm stance on the conflict, but not everyone is on the same side. Newsy correspondent Tyler Adkison explains what's happening there.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has split the hacking community, sending some of the most recognizable and powerful groups scrambling to pick a side to declare their allegiance to. In a tweet, Hacking Group Anonymous declared a cyber war against the Russian government and is claimed to be responsible for attacks that brought down Russia Today, a state-backed news outlet, and several government websites. It also said it hacked other Russia state TV channels. Conti, a ransomware group with possible ties to Russian intelligence that attacked more than 290 American targets last year, declared its full support of Russian government and would use all possible resources to strike back at any adversaries. Cyber threat intelligence company Orpheus Cyber reported another group united with Russia obtained stolen data from more than 45 Ukrainian government websites, with some of it up for sale. The motives of these hacking groups to pick a side range widely. Members of Anonymous have stated their guiding principle is anti-oppression. Russian-aligned attacks may be state-sponsored. They can also come from groups who feel pressured by the Kremlin to operate on their behalf.
It's not entirely clear what the connection is between the ransomware gangs and the Russian government. At best, they are working within a permissive environment. At worst, they are working for certain wings of the Russian government.
Some of the actions of Russian government just prior to the war of shutting down our evil gang, or arresting them and shutting down a number of dark web forums and shops. These cyber criminals are afraid that if they don't support the regime, they're going to be next.
Hacking groups may turn themselves into targets for moving away from their usual financial motives for attacks, however. After Conti declared support for Russia, an apparent insider who objected the group's support for Russia leaked a trove of internal chat messages and other files that Holden says, quote, mortally wounded the gang.
So when we see things like this, we are learning from how in 2021, 2022, cyber criminal enterprise operates. So we have ability to detect and deter organizations like this in the future.
Moving forward, experts told Newsy that any further cyber escalation could spell trouble for those outside the conflict zone, including Americans. Groups like Conti could come back to hit the US as well.
They are a highly effective ransomware group, albeit one that has terrible operational security. They likely do still have access to certain US networks that they have yet to encrypt, and they could potentially do that at any time.
Tyler Adkison, Newsy, Chicago.
Thank you for that, Tyler. Along with cyber warfare, there's another form of indirect pressure being applied on this conflict. We've seen a wide range of countries impose strict sanctions against Russia. The US and EU hit Russia's biggest banks hard, freezing the assets of the country's central banks, making them some of the most rapidly moving sanction campaigns in modern history.
The writing, I think, is on the wall. I think this is going to be a mammoth financial crisis in Russia. really only paralleled by the financial crisis in the 90s that brought Putin to power originally.
On Thursday, we also saw French authorities seize a yacht owned by a Russian energy oligarch by the name of Igor Sekin. The EU said he is considered to be one of the most powerful members of the Russian political elite and a close ally to Russian President Vladimir Putin. This is notable because many of the sanctions have been aimed at freezing and seizing the assets of oligarchs like Sekin. That kind of targeted action against a Putin ally is an escalation that goes beyond previous sanctions, which mainly targeted the Russian government and government officials. But it's something Western governments are now focused on to punish Russian leadership. The US Justice Department even created a task force to focus on that.
We will leave no stone unturned in our efforts to investigate, arrest, and prosecute those whose criminal acts enable the Russian government to continue this unjust war. Let me be clear. If you violate our laws, we will hold you accountable.
In the UK, lawmakers are scrambling to consider changes to a law which would make it easier to impose sanctions on Russian oligarchs. But there's one name that hasn't been on the list, and it quickly gained attention after this viral exchange earlier in the week.
You're talking about more sanctions, Prime Minister, but Roman Abramovich is not sanctioned. He's in London. His children are not in the bombardments. His children are there in London. Putin's children are in Netherlands, in Germany, in mansions. Where are all these mansions seized? I don't see that.
After growing calls from the public and increasing pressure, Abramovich announced he would sell the club. In a statement, Abramovich said he set up a charitable foundation where all net proceeds from the sale will be donated to victims of the war in Ukraine. To be clear, as of Thursday, Abramovich has not been targeted with sanctions. Newsy correspondent Luke Hanrahan explains why London has long been a safe haven of sorts for some Russian oligarchs.
For decades, London has been the Russian dirty money capital of the world.
Russians legitimize their money by bringing it outside of Moscow, away from the Kremlin, and also building up a stronger reputation for themselves.
A place where property rights are sacrosanct, making Britain a secure place to invest.
An estimated $2 billion worth of real estate has been purchased by Russian oligarchs connected to the Kremlin. I'm in Kensington and Chelsea, one of the most popular districts for Russians, where almost $400 million worth of homes have been bought by people connected to Vladimir Putin.
Not just homes, but soccer clubs too. Chelsea FC bought by this man, Roman Abramovich, a billionaire with long-standing ties to Putin.
Arguably the first club in Europe to become a billionaire's plaything. He claims he's a football fan. Other people will suggest that for these oligarchs to have their money in different areas, in different countries, can be helpful for them.
Russian money which has brought unprecedented success to Chelsea, a team made up of some of the highest-rated, best-paid players in the world. And with oligarchs now under the microscope, Abramovich has put this club up for sale.
I'm a Chelsea fan myself, and I've obviously enjoyed all the years of glory, but something doesn't quite sit right given what's going on in the Ukraine at the moment. So I think more sanctions from the UK government would be welcomed.
I think that the sanctions are worthwhile. I think that this will have a knock-on effect within Putin's inner circle.
It always makes you wonder where the money's come from when billionaires come over and buy clubs. I don't think it's just limited to Chelsea, though.
But could more be done to cut off the oligarchs from their billions?
Last week, the Prime Minister said that Abramovich is facing sanctions. He later corrected the record to say that he isn't. Well, why on earth isn't he?
Yes, says the leader of the Labour Party.
Mr. Speaker, it's not appropriate for me to comment on individual cases at this stage.
For all the money that they've stolen, they know that it's safe in London.
Bill Browder is an American-born British financier who's been fighting Russian dirty money for the last decade.
And I've seen lots of great pronouncements from the government, and they all just fizzle out into nothing when the rubber meets the road. And until I see otherwise, I would assume the same will happen here.
While more could perhaps be done to close the net on oligarchs, many believe the harrowing images from Ukraine are shifting the ground beneath them. Luke Hanrahan for Newsy, London.
Thank you for that, Luke. Now we're going to pivot to Poland and take a look at what's happening there. At least 1 million people have fled Ukraine since the Russian invasion. Hundreds of thousands of them have arrived in neighboring Poland as refugees. Many of them walked for miles to the border and faced wait times of more than 60 hours. It's no doubt been a brutal journey for the Ukrainians fleeing violence, and there's still so much uncertainty about their future. In Poland, Newsy correspondent Jason Bellini spoke to refugees about everything they left behind to make the difficult and dangerous journey to the border and what they hope the future holds for them.
I'm coming to you from a facility that's owned by a local community here in southeast Poland that decided to offer free lodging and meals to Ukrainian refugees. Already 200 people have cycled through here. There's room for 100 people here at any given time. How long can they stay? No limit's been set, but the goal, I'm told, is to find housing for them with Polish families, so others who've just arrived can use this place to regroup. It's an example of how communities are helping out however they can. This collection of food and clothing right here around me, that wasn't planned. When people heard that there were refugees staying here, spontaneously, Poles started bringing donations. They've got so much stuff here that plans are being made to send most of this into Ukraine. No one knows how long the refugees, now already totaling over 1 million, which is more than 2% of Ukraine's population, will be here. The European Commission is making plans to grant automatic temporary protection to Ukrainian refugees for up to 3 years. That'll include a residence permit and access to employment and social welfare. Right now, I can tell you, Christian, people don't seem to be focused on the long term. Mothers are focused on their children and just getting through the here and now, which is a lot easier to do when you have hot meals and a roof over your head.
Thank you, Jason. Newsy will continue to closely follow the situation in Ukraine with live updates around any major developments.